Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Sensei Q&A. This is the series where I answer the musical queries that you ask me on Instagram. If you want to jump around to any of the topics, I'll put up timestamps in the description. Before we get into it, I want to quickly let you know that this video is not sponsored and I have nothing to plug, so we're just going to get to it. To kick things off, my man Cheddar Kung Pao asks, why is it so fun to play loud? As far as playing your instrument loud goes, I'm thinking it's just because you feel more engaged by something when it's overwhelming one of your senses. Now, believe it or not, there's actually a really interesting theory as to why when you listen to recorded music loud, it sounds better. So back in 1933, these guys Fletcher and Munson performed an experiment to see how the ear responds to different frequencies at different volumes. And it turns out that we don't perceive the amplitude of pitch equally across the board. When music is quiet, the high frequencies and low frequencies sound louder than the mids. When that same piece of music is turned up, we perceive everything much more evenly. This means that we don't hear the spectrum of recorded music the same at different volumes. A good mixing engineer will try to find some balance here, but in my experience, they'll err on the side of making things sound better when they're louder than when they're quieter. That is a quick overview of the equal loudness contour. I'll link to an article in the description that goes into some more detail. Next up, Thomas Imaginario asks, what's the best way to know where are the notes on the guitar? One of the tougher things about guitar is visualizing the layout. Unlike a piano, for example, which is significantly easier because it's the same pattern of white and black keys repeated over and over and over again. After a single piano lesson, a student could probably tell you every single note on the piano, no problem. Whereas with guitar, I've known highly competent guitar players who couldn't instinctively tell you what note is on the 5th fret of the G string. I know this is something that I had to actively work on. I found that I was pretty confident with the notes on the E and the A string as so many chords are rooted on those. The exercise I'm going to show you is what I use to figure out the other strings. However, if you need some work on the E and the A string, it'll work too. First, pull up the circle of fourths. This is a great tool as it jumps around to all 12 possible pitches. This circle also has some music theory applications, but we're not going to worry about those today. What I'll do is pick one of the strings I need work on. Let's say it's the G string, and I'm going to play those notes around the circle using only that string. Let's give it a try. C, 2, 3, 4, F, 2, 3, 4, E flat 2, 3, 4, E flat 2, 3, 4, and so on until you get back to where you started. If you need to print off the circle of fourths and a diagram showing you where the notes on the G string are, go for it. Before long, you won't need them. You'll also want to do this with a metronome and find a tempo that you can complete the exercise at. Practicing should be challenging, but not impossible. You want to find that threshold tempo where you can just complete the exercise perfectly and write that down. When that tempo gets easy, speed up the metronome, repeat. George Davison asks, how would you recommend getting into a new style, specifically jazz? Okay, let's talk about this in two different ways. How to get into it as a listener and how to get into it as a musician. As a listener, the best thing you can do is explore. Jazz has been around for about 100 years, and there's a lot of diversity within the genre. Start with the big names, Charlie Parker, Miles Davis, John Coltrane. Go to their Wikipedia pages and start reading about their careers. When you come across a song or album that sounds interesting to you, go find it on YouTube. If you don't like it, don't worry about it, move on to something else. And if you do like it, great. Try to find some stuff that's similar to that. Now let's talk about how you'd approach a new genre as a musician. I've always found that it was especially beneficial to study the roots of a genre. Don't get me wrong, work on whatever it is you like about that genre, but just be aware that as music progresses, it often gets more complicated. If the first thing you try to do is learn John Coltrane's solo off of Countdown, you're going to have a bad time. But if you go back to the roots of jazz, when things were simpler, and learn, say, a Charlie Christian solo, you'll be able to get a lot more out of that. I truly believe that going back to the beginning and studying the roots will give you a strong foundation in learning a new genre, whatever genre that happens to be. Universe25 asks, how do I rate sheet music that involves a whammy bar? Well, my friend, you are likely wasting your time as guitarists are notoriously horrible at reading sheet music. My approach has always been, if I needed to explain something in standard notation that wasn't overly standard, then I would just write it out, and if there's a symbol that gets me within that ballpark, even better. So if I wanted a guitarist to dive bomb whammy the E, I would probably just write it like that. That's about as clear as you're going to get. Lucas RC15 asks, can I do whatever I want in music if it sounds good? Of course, I highly encourage that. There are no hard and fast rules in music, which is a common misconception people have with theory. Theory shows us the guidelines as to what impact our musical choices will have on a listener. What you do with those expectations is entirely up to you. No one is saying you have to always play into them, and it would be quite boring if you did. Everything you do on your guitar should first and foremost sound good to you. It's That Anthony asks, what's the best way to incorporate complexity into your music? There are two mindsets I take when I approach music. There is the playing mindset and the practicing mindset. When you're playing, you want to do as little thinking as possible. You want there to be a simultaneous connection between what comes out of your instrument and the creative centers of your brain. In these moments, you shouldn't be thinking about incorporating complexity. If the music calls for it and it comes out naturally, perfect. But if the song calls for 2 power chords, then play that. You shouldn't be trying to force something into a song just for the sake of its complexity. So this raises the question, how do you get complex things to come out of your music naturally? This gets to the practicing mindset, and this is the time when you're trying to introduce new elements into your musical subconscious. You can do this in a number of ways. Active listening is a big one. Take a piece of music that you like and deem complex, and listen to it focusing on nothing else but the music itself. When I do this, I listen very differently than when I'm listening for pleasure. I won't just play a song all the way through. When I get to a part that stands out to me, I'll rewind and listen to that over and over again, trying to sing along and trying to listen for subtleties, that kind of thing. At some point, when I've got these sounds in my head, I might start trying to figure them out on my instrument and then try to take these things and build exercises around them. For example, here's a gypsy jazz lick that I learned from Stahelo Rosenberg. One exercise that I could come up with is playing that lick around the circle of fourths that we looked at earlier. C, F, B flat, E flat, and around we would go. This is only one exercise. Try to be creative with this and come up with things that work for you and force you to incorporate new things in different ways. When you do this enough, they'll start coming out naturally when you're in the playing mindset. And last for today, Brendan Maneri asks, as a drummer, should he learn music theory? Which is a great question that gave me some pause for thought. I think there could be some great indirect benefits from learning theory, even if you don't use that information as much as a harmonic instrument would. You can take part in all musical conversations that a group is having and thus be more involved in the music that the band creates. You can be more invested in the writing process. And if you want to do any backup singing, theory will always help there too. Most drummers I know play another instrument like piano or guitar, not only because it allows them to access a whole other side of the musical experience, but also because by looking at music from a different angle, it will only make their drumming more mature. Theory is obviously going to help here too. In reality though, there are only so many hours in a day and you have to prioritize what you want to learn. I could understand how music theory would be lower on that list than drum specific things. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, another Sensei Q&A in the books. If you want to get involved in a future one of these, make sure you follow me over on Instagram and pay attention to my stories. Thank you all for watching. If you want to get caught up in the Sensei series, hit that link up there. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned to regular musical content. If you want to get some of that sweet Sammy G merch, you can find that over at shopsamuraiguitarist.com. Until next time, I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I will see you again soon.